Everyone, in this video, I am going to review the Garmin GPSMAP 66sr. Now, this is considered the top of the line, at least when it comes to positioning accuracy for the Garmin handhelds. And it's probably the best consumer handheld you can get when it comes to positioning accuracy. So, spoiler alert, after my time, which has been about almost 2 months of using it now, I have confirmed that, at least in my experience, this has been super accurate and reliable, even in very challenging environments like the Grand Canyon rim-to-rim hikes. Whether you're going on the South Kaibab, Bright Angel, North Kaibab, it's performed or outperformed the other options. And I'm going to use that example of a hike in my GPS test a little bit later, so you'll be able to see that and the results of that as you go through. I also have a corresponding guide to this on HikingGuy.com. There's a link to that right under the video if you're on YouTube, where you can deep dive into the maps and read a little bit more, get some links and more tips, unboxing resources on this that I won't discuss in this video. Now, before we dive in, Garmin actually sent me this unit to test. They did not pay me. This is not a sponsored video in any way, but they did send me this to test out. And when I'm done with my testing, I'm going to put this in a box and send it back. So thank you, Garmin, for that. Now, as you're watching the video, if you like it, if you could do me a huge favor, click a little thumbs up. That helps me out a ton. So thank you for that. And if you really want to help me out, I put affiliate links underneath this video and on the webpage. If you click on those links and you buy your 66sr or any other product right after clicking on those links, I get a small commission. There's no extra cost, and that's what I use to keep everything ad-free and sponsorship-free. So thank you, big thank you in advance for that. But anyway, let's jump into the Garmin GPSMAP 66sr. That's a mouthful. All right, so let's go into the satellite screen so I can explain two of the big positioning features on here, which is multi-GNSS and multi-band. Now, I don't want to get too technical. I have a full article on Hiking Guy, a different one about how GPS works. So please check that out if you want to dive deeper. But just to start, the multi-GNSS. A lot of people call this a GPS unit. It's actually GNSS. GPS is just these satellites in the United States. GNSS means Global Navigation Satellite System, encompasses all of these satellite systems available. And this receives the ones from Europe, Galileo, GLONASS from Russia, GPS from the United States, and also the Indian and Japanese ones, which have a footprint in Asia. A notable exception is it doesn't have the Chinese GNSS system. Name's escaping right now, but it doesn't really matter. Between all those satellite systems, it can get over 100 satellites as of now. Over 100 are operational. So it's basically giving the unit more options to pull from when it's getting your position. And ideally, it has at least 4. If it has a couple more, it gives it some options to choose from. It can choose a better signal over a weaker one. So having more in practice works. In theory, you only need 4 signals to get a position, a 3D position, and only 3 for a 2D position. Anyway, that's the GNSS feature. The other feature is multiband. And if you look down here, you'll see there's two different signal bars down here. There's L1 and there's L5. Now, when the satellites first went up in 1993 for GPS, they had just one signal coming out, which was L1. You can think of that as kind of the equivalent of AM radio. You know, you could hear things, but it's prone to interference and everything. As new signals or new satellites went up, they developed newer technologies and new signal encoding. And this multibands can receive those new signal or some of those new signals that are available now. And here you can see on the bottom, I'm getting all of these L5 signals. Those are the newer ones. And you can kind of think of that as like FM radio. It's a stronger signal. It's a better quality signal. And it basically means that the unit can read data better from it or more accurately. It doesn't get as garbled. And the other thing you might notice is that from the same satellite, we're getting both L1 and L5. And just so you know, the other systems have it, Galileo, GLONASS. We're not getting those now, but they all have the equivalent ones. They're not named the same. There's some technical differences, but they're all on there as well. But what this unit can do is when it receives the 2 bands or the 2 signals from the one satellite, it can determine if there's any errors in that signal and discard the signal if there are. So a common error is called multipath, where a signal will bounce off like a canyon wall or a tall building, and that will not give you as good of a position. If it can receive both of those signals, it can tell if one of them is bouncing or not. And it also can account for disturbances in the atmosphere using that same kind of principle. So those are the two features. And you can see here, we have all that going, and I get about 6 feet of accuracy. There it is, 6 feet. So long and short of all of that technical stuff is that you get a really good accuracy with the 66sr. Think of accuracy as sort of a bubble that the GPS says you're probably in this bubble. And with the 66R, I'm routinely getting 6 feet, and that's whether I'm out in the open or in the Grand Canyon, I'm getting 6 feet. Now, 6 feet is roughly as wide as my arm, so I'm just a little bit less than 6 feet. So the unit is telling me that I'm in a bubble this big. And if you're using the GPS unit for most backcountry applications like hiking, backpacking, whatever, geocaching, hunting, that's a pretty good accuracy. I don't know how much better a higher level of accuracy is going to get you. If it's 3 feet, if it's this wide as opposed to this wide, what is that really going to tell you if you're geocaching or trying to find a spot or a waypoint or trying to navigate a trail? It doesn't really buy you much. So I'd say it's probably about as good as it needs to get for most people. So that is a great thing. And, the other part of that is consistency, right? If I'm just stopped here and I'm sitting and I'm getting 6 feet because this unit is perfectly still and I'm able to get all these satellites, well, that seems pretty easy. But if I'm moving with this, can it consistently get a 6 foot accuracy? And the answer is yes. The practical application of all that is point after point when you're recording a track, you're going to get a better level of accuracy, which is going to make a more accurate track line. So when you get a distance off the 66sr, it's going to be closer to the real distance than it would be on a less accurate unit that maybe jumps around a little bit more. And I'll show you that in the GPS test in a second. Now, lastly, in terms of the GPS accuracy, there is a GPS elevation. So if you have 3 satellites fixed on this, you can get what Garmin calls a 2D position, which is your latitude and longitude. If you get 4 satellite fixed or more, you can get what they call a 3D position, which is your longitude, latitude, and elevation. And I have an article on how GPS works on HikingGuy.com. Check that out. It's a little deep for a review, so I'm not going to go into it. But basically, this can also get your elevation. And I found that it's usually been good to within 10 feet, which is really good for a GPS unit, which can vary up to hundreds of feet sometimes. The other upside of that is that this has a barometric altimeter in there too. So not GPS, but barometric, that uses a barometer to figure out the air pressure and your altitude. But what happens on this one is it calibrates that barometric altimeter through the GPS elevation. You can choose whether you want it to do that or not, or use a combination of GPS elevation with the map info. But if you use the GPS elevation and the GPS elevation is better, the barometric altimeter is going to calibrate better on this, and you're going to get a better position. And I found that I get a much better position altitude-wise on the SR, whether I'm using the barometric or the GPS altimeter. So all good stuff in terms of positioning accuracy. All right, so I'm at the Grand Canyon, and I'm going to hike rim to rim to rim, which is probably one of the best places you can test a GPS, especially a multi-band GPS where the the canyon multipath effect is supposed to be minimized. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen. I have no idea how this thing's going to perform. I'm going to do a test with 4 different GPSs. I've got the 66i, Phoenix 6X Pro Solar, that was a mouthful, the 66sr, of course, and an iPhone 12 Pro Max. And we're going to go down there, across the canyon, through the canyon walls, and then come back here. So let's do the hike and then download the tracks and see what happens. All right, so here we are back in the cushy world of the computer. So let's go ahead and look at the tracks here. Now the 66sr is green, and this is the 12, the iPhone 12. The purple is the 66i, and the light blue is the Phoenix. So from here on out, this is going down the Bright Angel. We look kind of okay, but you can see right away there's some divergence as we go down here. Here's the actual trail. This is what I was looking for in the satellite photo. Now what's interesting here is that showing the 66sr as being a little bit off the trail, but again, this is 4 feet wide, the trail, so this is within a 6 foot accuracy, so it's kind of okay. Let's just scan ahead and see where we can find a major malfunction. All right, so here's the first problem, which is the Phoenix Pro solar. You can see as we go down around this cliff here, it's starting to lose its mind right there. But the other ones seem to be doing well. And if you can see, the green 66sr is still on the trail according to the satellite photo. Let's keep going. If we look here, what's interesting is that when we have a good open sky, they're all doing really well. Like they're all basically the same here. This is all open, open trail, open desert, open sky here on the South Kaibab Trail. So let's keep on looking ahead. All right, here we are going down some switchbacks. You can see that they all start to lose it a little bit. It looks like the 66sr is doing well here, and they'll kind of come back together. But again, look, 66sr is right in the middle of the trail, right on the trail here, which looks pretty good. Let's keep going. All right, this is interesting. Here we're going down off of another sort of ledge here. Maybe this is the Tonto Plateau, I'm not sure, but here's the 66i, which is starting to lose its bearings around here. But then it picks it up again quickly. You can see there's a couple little dropouts from the iPhone. That's sort of to be expected. Here we have a major drift from the 66i. The 66i is way off the track here as we go down. And you can see here the cliffs are a little bit steeper as we zoom in, and everything is starting to lose its mind, but the 66sr is still doing pretty well here. This is walking through a tunnel, so don't necessarily look at that. And here we are back out on the other side, on the north side of the Colorado River. This is all pretty open, but if we go up a little bit, we're going to go through some pretty steep canyons here, and we should see some major dropouts again. Okay, look at this. Here's the Phoenix way, way off at this point, whereas the other ones are doing well. I'm surprised the iPhone's still doing pretty well there. Here we go in the steeper canyons. Here's the 66i is having a hard time. The other guys are doing well. Now here they're all starting to go off except for the 66sr. You can see very clearly the trail is down there, whereas these guys in this canyon are starting to lose their accuracy as we enter the steeper canyon walls here. And we continue up. You can see they're all over the place. Some of them get back on, some of them don't. Look at this big swing here from the 66i. I'm surprised the 66i is having such a hard time, but it is. And then more canyons, more problems here. The 66sr in green is still doing really well. Look at this in these canyons here. Here's the 66sr. Looks like it's right on track, whereas these other guys are way off. The 66i is really not doing well here. In fairness to the 66i, I look at these for all the hikes that I do, and usually don't get this bad of a divergence from reality, but I also don't hike in really steep canyons like this all the time, but pretty interesting. And then we start to come back to a clear sky, and you can see they're all lining up nicely again. Let's go ahead and move ahead to the North Rim and see when they start to freak out again, if they do that at all. Whoa, look at this. No bueno. 66i having a hard time there. Now this is interesting. Look at this whole thing over here. So here I'm in the heart of the climb, going up on the North Rim. You can see we go in deep. Look at that, the 66SR is still on the trail, but then I hit this area too, and it looks like a Jackson Pollock. Let's see how quickly they can recover. Well, look, it looks like the 66SR has kind of come back here on the path. These other guys are taking a little bit longer to get on there, and now they're back together. So overall, what this is showing me is that there are places where they all struggle a bit, but in general, the 66R has been doing well. Here's a really abnormal one from the 66SR. This is the first one we've seen on this path as we climb up here, and you can see also that Phoenix is having a hard time. They're all kind of freaking out a bit right around here. Let's see if I can see where the actual trail is. Here's the trail right there. So nobody's doing a good job of having me in the right place. And the practical effect of having this happen is it adds extra distance onto your track. So, you know, there's probably about a mile or so of extra distance on here from some of these tracks just because they've been popping around. And then here I'm in some fairly heavy pine forest, and you can see that all of them are doing pretty well aside from the Phoenix Pro Solar. All right, that's south and north. Let's just quickly look at the track the other way. All right, so this is the next day. We can assume different atmospheric conditions. I'm going north to south here. And again, the 66SR is green. Here we go down. This is that one section where everything freaked out before. The Phoenix is now freaking out there, but everything else is doing relatively well. As we go down, whoa, look at this, 66I. Yep, that's having troubles. Here's some major troubles right here from the Phoenix Pro Solar. This can be from bouncing off the canyon walls. It can be from not getting a correct fix, but you can see how far off it is there. And then they all converge. When the line of sight gets better, let's go back down to those steeper canyons where we were earlier. Here you can see they're kind of drifting off a little bit in these tougher areas. Here we are, they're all having a hard time there. You can see the trail right there. So they're all kind of hurting a little bit. The iPhone, surprisingly, and the 66SR are doing the best there. Not a big deal. All right, we're back across the river here. All pretty open. Here we are back in a canyon, and the 66SR is actually struggling here. There's the trail. You can see that surprisingly, the iPhone's doing okay. But the iPhone's also adding on these extra little jumps here, where on the 66SR, it's definitely smoothed out a bit, and it's not jumping wildly to either side like this is. Here's a really bad section from the SR where it's jumped over there, probably just because I said it wasn't. There it happens. If we just scan up here, I mean, I think you get an idea. In general, overall, the 66SR has had pretty good accuracy and reception in these canyons, is doing a pretty good job of tracking me down here, whereas the other ones all have a section of dropout or so where things like this happen. Here we go, climbing up the south wall on the Bright Angel Trail. 66SR is kind of okay. They all have their moments. The Phoenix is, I don't know what's going on with the Phoenix here, but it's really struggling. And yeah, from here on out, it looks like we're pretty good. This is a tougher section right there as well. And then here we are back up at the summit. And again, there's a little dropout or two. The one thing that's done pretty well, I was just going to say, is the 66I compared to the last south to north one we looked at. There weren't as many big dropouts on the 66I. Again, you know, different times, different atmospheric conditions, things can change. But overall, I would say that given the toughness of this test and of the conditions, that the 66SR has done very, very well in tracking me through this difficult terrain. All right, let's talk about battery life. Now, Garmin advertises 36 hours of power with this 66SR. I've been getting about 32 hours, which for a day hiker like me is great. I can use it for a few day hikes and I not have to charge it. And I can also use it for a 3 or 4 night backpacking trip and not have to charge it, and that's all good. Now, the one thing that might be a problem for you, I know some people get emotional about this, get very passionate about this, is that this has an internal lithium-ion battery. So you can't swap the battery in and out. You can't buy spare batteries and just do a battery swap when you have it. If you do want to get a GPS like that, check out the GPSMAP 65s, which is very similar to this. It's multi-GNSS, multi-band, but it also takes AA batteries, so you can swap batteries in and out. For me, having an internal battery actually works better. You simply charge it with a micro USB charger, which is pretty much what you find in any kind of consumer handheld electronic goods cable. So for me, if I have my phone, I have this, I have a camera, I have a headlamp, they all charge with a micro USB cable. So instead of having to take multiple batteries, I just bring a cheapo USB charger that I got on Amazon, one cable, and I can charge all of those different devices with this one little brick here. So in that sense, for me, the workflow, having the internal battery is a much better option. Now, one thing you should do when you get your 66SR, or pretty much any Garmin handheld for that matter, is turn on battery saver. Now, what battery saver will do is it'll turn the screen off once your backlight turns out, and you can change the backlight interval to be between 15 seconds and up or never. But essentially what that means is you use the GPS, you let it sit for 15 seconds, and it'll turn the screen off, it'll start saving power. And with that enabled, with the backlight at 100, like I said, I've been getting about 32 hours of battery life, which is really good. Pretty much on the upper end of what you can expect, I think, from a handheld GPS these days. One of the quirky things with the battery is it only gives you this graphical representation of it right there. It doesn't give you a percentage or give you an option to display a percentage. The only time you get to see a percentage is when you're charging it and the unit is powered down. The cool thing is that you can connect this to the Garmin IQ store, Connect IQ. And when I say store, it's usually the apps are free, but some of them you have to pay for. But you can download third-party widgets on here. And the way you access these battery widgets is you click on this for the backlight, and then I go over to the side, and I could download widgets like this, which give me a battery level and give me an estimated time left on that charge. I'll put a link to this battery widget in the article, so if you do want this, I do recommend getting this. It's really the only one I do use. Another strong feature on the 66SR are the included maps. Now this comes included with Garmin Topo Active maps, and depending on where you are, you get a different map set if you're in Europe, if you're in North America. And overall, these maps are really good. There's a lot of trail coverage on them. I'll show you them in a second, but they used to not be so good. They're better now. The other maps you get are the bird's eye satellite photos. It comes with a free lifetime subscription, so as long as you have the device, you can download those satellite photos. And they were not as good. They're not as good as Google satellite photos, but maybe that's not a fair comparison. But they are better now, and they are continually updated, those satellite photos. So they have gotten better over the years, and I'll show you those in a second as well. You can also load on here free OpenStreetMaps. I have an article on that. So if you go to the website for Hiking Guy, I'll show you how to put the free OpenStreetMaps on here. And you can also do custom maps. And again, I have an article for that as well. So go to Hiking Guy. I'll put a link to that there. So there's a lot of mapping options on the 66R. Let me show you some of what comes bundled on here. All right, so the maps on board are the Topo Active maps. There are higher detailed level maps that you can buy. I'll talk about that in a second. But overall, these maps are really good quality. They get updated fairly often, and they're based on OpenStreetMaps. I've noticed that in my adventures with this around Southern California and in Arizona, that all of the documented trails, all the named trails have names on here as well. And it includes a good level of trails, almost all of the trails that are like official trails. So trails, if you looked on like the Forest Service website and you found a web page for a trail, like it'll probably be on here. One of the things that it doesn't include, which is I think a good thing, are these smaller use trails and little cutoff trails that you'll find on OpenStreetMaps that might look like a regular trail, but when you get there are actually, bushwhacking or just little animal tracks. So in general, it has just the right level of detail for the trails on these maps that are on board. It also comes with bird's eye satellite maps, and what these do You can see here I got a pretty good level of detail. It'll overlay the trail names and the features on top of these satellite photos, which is cool. And it goes pretty deep. I mean, here I am sitting by this parking lot in Crystal Cove, and I'd say that level on this little screen is acceptable for a satellite photo in the field. It'll help you make decisions. It's not as good as Google, but it does work, and these do get better. If you go to the web page, they say they update them every 2 years. I have noticed that they've gotten better in the last year or so. So maybe we just got an update. Who knows? I think it's going to vary depending on where you are, but for me here in Southern California, the bird's eye is pretty good. The one thing that's a little bit clunky is to download it. You have to go to bird's eye. I have to go on Wi-Fi. I'm not on Wi-Fi out here, but I basically have to go to Wi-Fi and then pick a radius around a point. It's much easier to download the imagery using Garmin Basecamp and then just transfer it onto the unit. But a couple options, and the bird's eye is good, and hopefully as time goes on, we'll get better. A couple other quick notes about the maps. You can put a micro SD card in here, up to 32 gigs, to load all kinds of other custom maps that you'd like to on it. You can also put Garmin 24K topo maps, which cost extra. You can put those on here as well, whether on a card or a download. And you can also load Garmin City Navigator maps onto here. Now, if you want to search for an address, if I want to search for 1000 Figueroa Avenue, Los Angeles, I can't type an address here and search. It only searches sort of natural landmarks unless you have the City Navigator maps. An easy workaround is if you roughly know where the address is, you can move the mouse pointer to that address, hit go, and it'll route you there. And again, you can load the OpenStreetMap, the free OpenStreetMap maps onto here as well. So if you get a unit that maybe only has North America and you're going to Asia or Europe, you can load those free maps on here and you don't have to pay money for them. I almost forgot to mention, you can hook this up to Garmin Basecamp on a computer, and when you do that, you have access to not only the Topo Active, but the bird's eye maps on your computer, which is a great planning resource. If you want to plan a trip out, plan a hike out, you can do it on the computer with the maps that you have on here in a higher resolution format because it's on a computer screen. Do your tracks, your waypoints, whatever they might be, and then send them onto the device. You can also download bird's eye maps on the computer, and you can do a custom shape for the bird's eye maps or whatever you might like to do, and then transfer them onto the device, which is a little bit easier than downloading them directly onto the device. There's a couple other things I want to point out about the 66sr, mostly highs and a couple of lows that you should be aware of before you buy it. So first off, this is built for the outdoors, right? This is something I can drop. Sorry, Garmin. I can drop, I can get wet. I like the units with the buttons over the touchscreen because when it's raining hard or I have gloves on, I found that the buttons work much better. The one thing I love about the buttons is they have haptic feedback. So when you click on it, you feel it click, and you also get a little sound. Hopefully you heard that. But it makes it easy to use when the conditions are not so great. Again, if you're hiking in fair weather all the time, you can probably get away with a phone, but if it's going to rain, you're going to be out in the cold, whatever it might be, you're going to want buttons like this. It also has a rubberized part of the unit around there so you can grip it and not lose it. The screen is really good. It's very readable. I believe it's 3 inches here. Sunlight readable. I never had a problem reading this, and you can adjust the backlight settings either through this screen or through the settings on there. Overall, really good. Fits right in the palm of your hands, and you can also use it with one hand, which I do all the time. I can just use it. I can move my thumb around here, and I can hit this power button up top with that finger. So really well thought out, just like the other Garmin handheld units. It works well when you're in the outdoors. And then also, like I mentioned before, it's got these rubber covers for the ports on here. And I've thrashed this fairly hard and never a problem with getting it to work, getting it to turn on. Some people do shatter the screen. I mean, if you smash the screen on a rock, you can definitely shatter it, and some people get screen protectors. But I usually just keep mine in a backpack pocket. I take it out to use it, and I put it back. And I've also done it in a shorts pocket, and I never really smashed it or anything. So sometimes when people clip it onto their packs and they throw their packs down, it's easy to smash. So just be careful if that's the case with you too. But otherwise, really solid, purpose-built outdoors unit. Another thing I should mention while we're here is if you want to move around on the map, you just use the arrow keys like this to go around. So there's no touch screen at all. It's all done with arrow keys and these buttons right there. And as is the case with most Garmin units, you can customize pretty much everything on here. There's different profiles where you can have different setups for all the different things you might do. You can change the icons that are on the home screen. You can take them off. You can add ones on there. You can add settings on there. It's really handy in that sense. You can take the things off that you don't use. And then on the pages like this, you can change the data fields so you're only seeing what you'd like to see on here, whatever it might be. You can customize almost everything on here, and that's a big plus, especially the more you use it. You can get it all set up, and it's just secondhand. You can glance down and know where everything is. Really, really handy in that sense. The 66sr has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and you can sync with basically the two Garmin ecosystems. You can sync with Garmin Explore, which is the outdoors and navigation ecosystem. So if you have the Explore app on your phone, you can sync your waypoints and tracks with that. You can also sync with the Garmin Connect ecosystem, which is the fitness-based one, or both of them at the same time. So that's a handy option. It's very easy to get items on and off of the unit. And again, you can hook it up to Garmin Basecamp using a cable and transfer things back and forth. And you can also hook it up with a cable and access everything on here as a disk drive. So if you want to manually pull off your tracks, you can just load it as a disk drive and copy the GPX files over. So lots of flexibility in terms of how you sync and get data on and off of here. So the altitude barometer and compass, the ABC sensors, all work the same as other Garmin units. They work well, they're fine. The compass is accurate. The altimeter is occasionally accurate, but on this unit, because it has a better GPS and because it uses the GPS to calibrate the altimeter, and if I go here, if I go to settings, let's go to settings, calibrate altimeter. So I can use the GPS altitude to calibrate, and because my GPS altitude tends to be more accurate, my barometric altitude tends to be more accurate because it's calibrating based on the GPS. So again, I can usually get within 10 feet, whether I'm using the GPS or the barometric altimeter, which is pretty darn good. But otherwise, these sensors work the same as they do on other Garmin units, which I would say is acceptable. So on the downside, two things mainly stand out. First is active weather. Now, you need basically a connection to the outside world in order to use active weather. So if you're using this in the backcountry, don't click on this and expect to get a weather forecast or report like you could with a inReach device where you can get that over the satellite. You can't do it here. You need the internet to be activated in order for this to work, and it needs to be syncing with your phone or with Wi-Fi to get active weather. And even when you have it, it's not any better than what you could get on your phone, usually worse resolution, so I never use that. The other thing that's not so great, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, is the interface. If you're not used to a Garmin and you're looking at this interface, you might be wondering if I shot this video in 1998 because it's kind of clunky, it's old school. I think it's due for a refresh at some point, but it's the same old interface. If you've had a Garmin before, it's basically all the same stuff. Now, I got to say that having this be simple and predictable and common and constant has helped when the conditions are bad. So when it's really rainy, or it might be a little, my eyes might be blown out from a lot of sun during the day, this is really easy to get around, and there's nothing tricky here. There's no small writing like I might see on a smartphone app. It's just really simple to use and easy. So in that sense, having this kind of dated interface works well. There's probably something that solves that problem that doesn't look as dated, but you know, it works. You just get used to it if you're not already. So hopefully this look at the 66SR has been helpful for you. Now, whether you should get a 66SR or not is another question. There are a lot of different options out there. There's a bit of an alphabet soup when it comes to Garmin GPS model numbers. There's a 66SR, there's the S, there's the ST, there's the I, there's the 65S. So a lot of different choices. Now, if you want inReach, the 66SR does not have it. You have to get a 66i. But of course, if you get a 66i, it doesn't have multi-GNS or multi-band. So you really kind of have to decide what you want. Now, because these models come out all the time and things change, if you go to Hiking Guy, if you go to the article for the 66SR, I'll give you my recommendations at the bottom of the page based on what your use case is. For example, if you need inReach, and you want a high degree of accuracy, you might be better served by getting a 66SR and an inReach Mini. Or if the accuracy of 6 feet versus 12 feet doesn't matter, then you can just get a 66i. Most people will be good for that, you know, except for the most extreme conditions like in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So a lot of different options. I'll keep that page updated so that when new models come out, I'll update the recommendations there. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments on YouTube, but do read the article first. There's a lot more information in the article that I cover. And if you like the video, once again, if you could use the little thumbs up button to say thank you, or even better yet, use the links underneath to purchase your Garmin GPS or any other item using those links. I get a small commission if you buy something within 24 hours. So thank you for that. And yeah, 66SR, thank you, Garmin, for sending it over. And I'm getting attacked by a bug, so that's my cue to call it a day. All right, guys, bye.